Okay, Grandma, can I today ask you some questions? Okay. Okay. Um, what is your full name and why were you named this?
My full name is Christine with a CH, Margaret Genevieve Petrakowski Kolenko. Christine was after my grandmother in Ireland, Christina, my mother's mother, who I never got to meet, but she was the musician. And that's why I was named after. And that's why I got piano lessons when I was 7. Margaret was after my Aunt Margie, who was my godmother. Genevieve, with a Gen, was after my Aunt Jenny, who was my confirmation sponsor. Petrakowski was my maiden name because that was my dad's last name. And Kolenko is Grandpa's last name, so I took his last name when I got married.
Okay, can I ask you another question?
Please do.
What is the date and place of your birth?
I was born on June the 6th, 1947, at St. Mary's Hospital in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, which, ironically, is the same building that has the big circular staircase where you and Lucy and Frankie sat for your Christmas performances when you went to Nurturing Nook. That is the same building, that building. Now there's a new hospital across the street, but that was only born before Angie and Emmy were born, and that's where they were born. But that building wasn't there when I was born. But that old building is the building I was born in, someplace in there. Wow is right.
Okay, what was your schooling like? And how did you get to school? What classes did you take? And what was your favorite subject?
Oh, school. Well, I remember when I first went to school, I think I told you this story. Maybe I didn't tell you all the story. The first school that I went to was when we lived on the south side of Milwaukee in some buildings that were called Quonset, Quonset, huts, Huts. They were actually left over from the Army days because I was born shortly after, a few years after the Second World War, and there was what they called a baby boom because all the people had gone off, mostly the guys went off to the army, came back and got married and started families, and there weren't enough houses. So they brought these big round aluminum huts called Quonset huts. You could look that up and see what they look like. And those were the houses. They didn't have basements. They had a little smokestack because we had a little not a fireplace, like a oven, a little that you had to throw bricks or something into. So it had a round top on it. So when we lived there, that was on a big, like a parking lot that they put those all on, like a housing project, on 20th and Oklahoma.
Oh, wow.
And I remember that's where we lived when I went to kindergarten at St. Gerard School, which was on 16th in Oklahoma, so just 4 blocks away. But at the time, it was my mom who had to walk me to school. So we had to cross Oklahoma, and that's probably the street where you have watched the Cinco de Mayo parade or the Mexican Independence Parade on Oklahoma, I bet you have. And so she had to cross the street and walk me all the way down those 4 blocks, which was an empty field on that side of the street. And she had to walk me to kindergarten. And I'm pretty sure she was pregnant with my brother at the time, or she had him and he was in a stroller. So she took me to school a few times, and then one day she was really too tired to walk all the way. So she said to me, I will, and she was supposed to walk me to school, and she was supposed to walk to school to pick me up after school. And after school, she said, I'm not going to walk down to meet you. You come out from 16th Street and walk up to 20th Street, and I'll be waiting there on the corner where there was a tavern.
What's a tavern?
Tavern, like a bar. But those were like corner restaurants, and people would go in and get fish fries and beer. It wasn't like it was just like a pub in Ireland, more like a hangout. She said, I'll just be waiting for you there, and then we'll cross the street. I just can't walk all the way down there. So it came to be, I don't know, first week of school, second week of school, whatever it was, and she didn't come to pick me up, and I was really worried. And the teacher, who was a nun, a sister, said, well, where is your mother? I was the last one there. And I said, she told me she'd meet me by the tavern. Well, can you imagine what the nun thought about that? Sending a little 4 or 5-year-old out to go to the tavern. So I don't exactly remember if my mom ended up having to come. I don't know that the sister walked me down. I can't remember exactly how that happened. But I know my mother was like really embarrassed because it sounded like she was being negligent picking me up at the tavern. So that was kind of a funny story. So that's what I remember about the first place. And then we moved. And we moved to the other side of town. We moved to 16th and Burleigh, the north side of town, because that was a real house. It was like a flat, kind of like duplex, like where you live now. It had a basement, and it had a middle floor, and it had an upstairs, and it had an attic. And that's where we lived when my brother was born then. And then I had to take a bus to school. And I went to school on 2nd and Burleigh, so we had to take the Burleigh bus all the way down. And my mom or dad had to take me every day when I was little till I was old enough to go by myself. Then when I was in 5th grade, we moved to 2nd and Burleigh across from the school and the church, which was St. Elizabeth's. And we lived right across the street. And that's when I had learned to start playing the organ. And Mass would be every day. And sometimes there were 3 Masses. And I could just run across the street and play the organ. It was really cool. So it was then. So I went from living far away from school, where I had to take the bus, to living right across the street to school. So which one do you think I was on time for most often? Probably not the one right across the street. Probably, I don't know. So we lived there until I was in high school. And then when I was in high school, because I walked to Messmer High School, where Daddy had worked for a while. And that was about 2 miles. So we would walk, and I went to St. Elizabeth's until 9th grade. They had 9th grade because there were so many kids they couldn't all fit into the high school. So they had to stay at the grade school, and they put the freshmen here like 9th grade. There were lots of kids. So that's called the baby boom after the Second World War. So then, and like Grandpa too, he went to St. Pete's, they had 9th grade there. So we just went to high school at Messmer for 3 years. And then I could walk there. And that's what I did most of the time.
Thank you.
So that's the beginning. That's through high school. You want to know any more?
Do you remember hearing your grandparents describe their lives? What did they say?
Well, that's really a good question, because my grandparents, I had 4. So this is what I know about them. So there were only 2 who lived in America. 2 lived in Ireland, because they were my mom's mom and dad, right? Okay, so the 2 who lived here, my grandpa, I think he had cancer, and he died right before I turned 1. He died, I'm pretty sure in May. My birthday was in June. But everybody told me, and even as I was growing up, that I had such chubby cheeks that he used to say, you must have mashed potatoes in your cheeks. And that he was in bed a lot, and he used to let me jump on the bed or bounce me on the bed like that. So that was and he had come from Poland when he was a little boy. So that was my grandpa. Theodore was his name. And then, so I don't remember him at all. But then I do remember my grandma, whose name was Mary. Her maiden name was Lederer. And I remember the house they lived in. It was on the south side, right near Humboldt Park. And I remember going there for the fireworks, the 4th of July, because it was so near Humboldt Park. And we would all sit out on the hill and watch the fireworks, and it was too loud for me. So they let me come inside and just be with my grandma because it was too loud on the hill. But my grandpa was really involved, I heard, in making sure that the 4th of July would be safe, and that the county, the parks, would do the fireworks so that people wouldn't go get their own fireworks, because kids were losing fingers and eyes and everything from popping off their own fireworks. So we were always told you shouldn't have your own fireworks because it's dangerous, because it was. So, and he was one of the people who used to wear white and give out the ice cream at the 4th of July when you go to the parade. So I was thinking about that. So my grandma and grandpa in Ireland, I never got to meet because, let's see, my grandpa, Patrick Kelly, I remember when he died. I remember we were still living in the Quonset huts. And I think my brother was probably born or was right around there. I forget. I could find out if you needed to know. And I remember my mom getting a letter or maybe a telegram. And I remember I was standing in back of her. So maybe we'll find out the year. So I was like maybe 4. And she was crying because she got this letter that said her daddy had died. And I remember saying, "Don't cry, Mommy. Don't cry, Mommy." So I felt bad when my mommy was crying. So that's how she found out about her dad dying. And then her mother was still alive. And then we were living on 2nd Street by that time. And she was going to go back. That's when I was like in high school already. And she was going to go back. But her mother died right before she was going to go back. But she didn't see her mom for 17 years. So I only have learned about her mom. But you got to remember, I mean, they barely had telephones working back there. It was too expensive to call long distance. So that's what I know about my grandparents. But I do remember my grandma, Petrikowski, and I remember that she used to dye Easter eggs with all the skins from onions and all those different colors. And I remember, and she liked Limburger cheese, and I remember it all smelled like cheese. And I remember going out in her backyard and looking at her tomato plants, and oh my God, they smelled so good. And still whenever, like sometimes, like I just got tomatoes the other day and they came with the stem, and I'm like, oh, that smells like my grandma's garden. And she had marigolds, remember that? And she used to walk around this big, huge garden with her. So that's what I remember about my grandparents.
Okay.
Oh, one more thing. I must, this is very important. I must tell you that I really credit my grandparents with helping me to learn to play the piano, because like I said, I was named after my grandmother in Ireland, who was a musician, and she played the piano and she taught the music and she played the organ in church. And my grandma here used to help pay for my piano lessons because my dad was out of work a lot. Like they would have a strike, he'd get laid off, or he was sick a lot, he had cancer and he had back surgeries. And we had to get food from the St. Vincent de Paul because we didn't have enough food. And my grandma paid for my piano lessons to make sure I could keep playing piano. So I really thank my grandparents for that. So that's probably one of the big things that I remember about my grandparents.
Okay. Sorry. Okay. Okay. What is the funniest thing that you remember that your children said or did?
The funniest thing? Oh my gosh. They were pretty funny. They were all.
Because you had 4 children, tell me 4 times.
Oh, well, I'll tell you, one of the funny things was when your mother took your uncle into the bathroom, and he was only like, maybe he was not even 2. And they used to play, they played and played. It was so much fun. They were always playing together. And it came out, and he had this blonde hair. It was like here. And all of a sudden his hair was cut. Like he looked like he was bald. She had cut his hair. I think he made her do it. I think he thought it was funny. Another time he came out with barrettes in his hair. That was pretty funny.
Oh, jeez.
So, I mean, they all did funny things. I can remember, Auntie Angie, I took her, so we'd have some special time when she was like 3. I took her to a concert, and she was dressed in this real pretty dress. She was sort of the middle child, you know. And I took her to this concert, and it was pretty special because she was pretty little for doing that. And she sat there and she said, "Thank you, Mommy, for bringing me here." And I remember thinking, like, oh my gosh, this poor kid is so deprived. I've never done a thing with her, so it was a bit, you know, that was good. And then I remember Emmy, yeah. I can still see her over there. Grandma and Grandpa Petrukowski bought her, I think they bought her a rocking chair. Somebody bought her a rocking chair. I don't know where it is now. And I know Grandma and Grandpa Petrukowski bought her a swimming suit for her birthday. And she had to try on that swimming suit. Oh, gosh. And there she was standing in the rocking chair with the swimming suit on. She was like about 3 or 4. She always liked to swim. Maybe it was because of that swimming suit. So there you go. And then I remember a funny story about Auntie Angie. They used to borrow clothes from each other. And one day, but it was a rough winter. It was a rough winter, so that meaning it was snowy and icy like forever, and everything was frozen over, and you didn't think it was ever going to melt, you know. And then things started to melt, and I was like, I don't know, I was shoveling in the front, and I looked by the gutter. I'm like, what is this? It was like a shirt or a pair of pants that was Mom's that Angie had borrowed and took to school. She'd take something, I think, and go to school and change it at school. Wear something that Mom had. And she would only wear black pants. It's the only kind of pants she would wear. And they were called these MC Hammer pants. They're big, baggy. What else was there? There's another name. Not gypsy, but something, whatever. So there were just funny things like that.
Anything really funny about Nick?
Oh yeah, I mean there were lots of funny things. Well, he didn't mind playing with the sisters. He didn't mind playing dolls and all that. He was pretty good about that. And then we had a dog, Patchy. You know, and everybody dressed Patchy up like in doll clothes. They were pretty good about playing together. And they used to like to play in the basement. The basement was really, wasn't that a nice place to play? It was so nice. Too bad it got flooded. But they would just, everybody would go down there and
Wait, it got flooded?
Yeah, when you were like, just after you were born, Mom was down there with a mask and digging it out. I was like, oh, I can't believe this. So, anyhow, so there were a lot of, those are just a couple. I could, but I don't want to bore you. You have more questions. You still